Welcome to the SBR NHL Double Play. It's the Play of the Day video for Tuesday, December the 3rd. I'm Ian Cameron, joined by Adam Booth, as we are 3 days a week bringing you our plays of the day for the NHL slate of course, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, usually being the three common busiest days of the week in the NHL. That's why we've picked them. This day, no different. 10 games on the board to choose from. We each have isolated our top play. We will be recommending those on the show. So looking forward to it. Let's get to Adam's play first. He has gone to the interesting East versus West matchup. Tampa Bay Lightning, Nashville Predators, courtesy of SBRodds.com. Make sure you're using SBRodds.com, checking it out every day when you're placing your wager so you get the best line and price available. Right now, Nashville anywhere from minus 105 to minus 110. Just a very, very slight home favorite, actually more like even money on both sides with this Lightning Predators game. Total 6.5. Adam liking the home side. It's hard to make heads or tails personally for me of this Tampa Bay team right now. One game looks so good, one game looked not good. That seems to be the pattern we've been seeing really most of the season for the Lightning, and not all that surprising. I warned people before the season started, don't be looking to back Tampa Bay regularly here in the regular season. You know, the President's Trophy is far from their minds. They don't give two hoots about it. If they sputter and they scuffle and they just slog their way through the regular season and just peak at the right time late in the season going into the playoffs, they'll be more than happy with that. I think they learned their lesson last year. Sometimes a record-setting regular season doesn't set you up for success at playoff time. I think Tampa Bay is still trying to tweak line combinations, find things that work, fine-tune their defense, which has struggled for the majority of the season, and as a result, I can tell you right now, in terms of profitability, Tampa Bay, one of the actually more least profitable teams in the NHL this season. And Adam's going to say they're not profitable tonight either. Adam, what do you like?
Yeah, you laid it out really well there. I appreciate that. It's almost like you're setting the context for what I'm going to get into. I don't think the Lightning, if you go back through this sort of iteration with Cooper and Stamkos and Kucherov, Vasilevsky, this sort of roster, I think if you go back through the seasons, there haven't been many 3-game losing streaks and probably even less likely 4-game losing streaks. So you're probably, if you're just looking at it from that angle, like Lightning are due, you're probably okay to try and get them in spots like this. For me, this was kind of a clear signal to go with Predators. I understand the pick 'em pricing. The Predators are off a kind of random, or I guess anomaly of sorts, with a 3-0 shutout at the hands of a rookie goaltender in the Florida Panthers, who've been leaking goals all season. I thought the Predators played a good game in Florida. But those things happen. So I'm not reading too much into, okay, well, the Predators' offense is dried up all of a sudden. But if we go to look at Tampa's, so there's a likelihood that Rinne gets the start tonight against Vasilevsky. These goalies have not been at the same level for most of the season. Rinne did have, 3 or 4 games where there's 5-6 goals that were going in against him. But he's also had 3 shutouts in 15 games. So he's also, we've talked, this is why in the article I called them very much a Jekyll and Hyde team, both of these teams. And it would be funny, Ian, if we heard after the season was over, the Tampa Bay Lightning win the Cup, and then it comes out that, Cooper met with the team early on and just said, just play, didn't put too much pressure on them and just sort of said, go have fun out there. It would be funny if there was an actual voice that had given reason to what we're seeing from them, which is a very, teams like this you typically find in like a Stanley Cup championship hangover period. But of course, the Lightning had 4 extra games last season than every other team. So it's not like, or every non-playoff team. So it's not like we're seeing a Stanley Cup hangover, but it would be funny if there was some, we'll start it getting going in March. If Cooper talked to the GM about that would be funny in my eyes. But as far as picking a side here, I had the Predators at about 60% to win this game, which is significant considering the line's at a pick 'em. I don't think it'll drop much lower than this. I do think it makes sense given sort of the inconsistencies of both teams. Tampa has, I mentioned in the article, they won those 2 games in Sweden against the Sabres. Then they returned. They smacked the Rangers, and everybody was sort of like, okay, this is the Bolts that we remember from last season. The offense is going to start rolling. And then they put on, they won a series of games, and they did have a bit of a streak there. But in those games, one of them was that Ducks game I mentioned before, where, they're being outplayed by a bottom 5, bottom 6 team in the league. And yeah, they get the victory, but it sort of spells some sort of predicative. Are they about to go on a losing streak? And that's what we've seen over the past 3. And in those past 3, they did play. So they played St. Louis, Washington, and Carolina. St. Louis has just had their number. I thought Tampa actually played pretty well. Then they had the 3-1 lead in the third period against Washington in Washington, and they let that slip away and lose in overtime. And then they were down 3-0 after the first against the Hurricanes. And through the second and third, they actually picked it up significantly, came very close to tying it up. And, with momentum, things like that, we do see, an early 2 or an early 3-0 lead can lead to one team sort of putting on the start coasting through later periods of the game. And Tampa definitely came on in the second and third. So maybe they got a bit of momentum. Maybe they're, you can say they're a bit angry that they're on a 3-game losing streak. Maybe there's a bit of, chatter that, we're going to shuffle things up. I'm not reading too much into that. I think the Predators are equally in a spot where they know that they can't have another, 5-game losing streak like they had, where it's ugly. And I just think that the Predators are playing better hockey slightly based on some of the numbers. But, it's Tampa, and you can't really write them off. So I get the line, but I'm going with the model here. And so I got it at -105. Looking at the board, it's -107 at Pinnacle, -105 at Bet Online, kind of between that -110, -105 everywhere across the board. So you can definitely still get it. And I don't think there's any rush on this one. I don't expect to see it drop down to like -120 or anything like that.
Yeah, that's the one thing about hockey that's great is that rarely are you going to see extreme price moves and extreme totals moves like compared to the other sports. For college basketball, I handicap that at this time of year. I got to be on top of this crap overnight and worry that, hey, maybe in the morning when I wake up, the line's going to be 2 points worse of it for me. I got to worry about that kind of stuff in college basketball. Hockey, not so much. So I like that aspect of it.
I actually thought you were going to be on the over. I thought you'd take the over 6.5 in this one because
Nashville's played really good defensively the last 2 games. That's the thing that's kept me off the over. They've shut out Carolina. They played a pretty good defensive game, even in the loss to Florida. You hold Florida to 3 goals, believe it or not, on their home ice, and we'll get to Florida and how they've scored goals in bunches at home in just a minute. Yeah. But, Nashville, to hold Florida to 3 goals, even though they got shut out in that game, that's pretty good. The way Florida's been able to score goals. So they have played better defensively. That's my one concern here. And the last time I think I bet a Tampa-Nashville over was earlier this season. I think it stayed under with that. So that's why I passed on it, the total. But you're right. That's usually the kind of play that would be in my wheelhouse. But I will tell you a play that is in my wheelhouse. My play of the day for this Tuesday card, Minnesota-Florida is the game we've looked at. It's Florida. You talk about a game where there's actually been some significant movement in terms of the side. Florida opened -160 here in this game. It's all the way down to -125.
Yeah.
On the Florida Panthers here at home. The total 6 across the board. Look, Minnesota, let's give them a little bit of credit. We like to bash Minnesota. I like to bash at least Minnesota a lot. They've been a disappointing team. They're a team that's in transition, an older team when you think of Suter and Parise, and the likes and Mikko Koivu. It's a team that's going to be blowing the thing up probably in the next year or 2 and starting from scratch and rebuilding. But this team still thinks they've maybe got one last little surge or one last little push to be a playoff team in them. And right now they're playing like it. They're playing probably their best hockey of the year. They're 5-2 in their last 7 games. They've beaten some decent teams in that regard. They should have beat Boston. You remember that game they blew it.
They should have beat
4-2
Boston,
lead.
and they should have beat the Rangers. They had third period leads against both of them. You're absolutely right about that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Couldn't hold on to leads. Other than that, they beat Colorado, good team. Beat Buffalo. They beat, New Jersey, not a good team, but they beat Ottawa. They beat Dallas in their last game in a shootout. So things are perking up. And the thing that I caught my eye about Minnesota, I went and looked when I looked at this game, is Minnesota. I knew they were playing better. Why are they playing better? They're scoring. That's why they're playing. The offense has come to life for the Minnesota Wild. How about 3 goals or more for the Minnesota Wild in 8 of their last 9 hockey games? They've scored at least 3 goals in 8 of their last 9. That's good news for the Wild. Look at their power play numbers, Minnesota, in recent games. They've scored a power play goal, remarkably, in 7 of their last 8 games. And in 2 of those 7 games, they've scored multiple power play goals. So the special teams is working. The power play is finally connecting. And when I see a power play that's working and an offense that is in good current form, both 5-on-5 and with the man advantage, and now they're facing Florida, I think you got a good chance to keep your offense going when you play this Florida Panthers team. We know defensively this is a hodgepodge unit. This is not a blue line that's loaded with guys that are shut down defensemen. They've got more of the puck-moving ability, skating, offensive-minded defensemen. When you think of Yandel, you think of Ekblad, you think of Weegar, Mike Matheson and Mark Pysyk. Their bottom pair defensemen are not very good in terms of being sound, sturdy, shutdown defensemen in their own end. It's just not the great shutdown blue line. They're more of a good blue line when it comes to getting the rush started, moving the puck, not so much defending in their own zone. That's why I don't hold Bobrovsky completely at fault for not having a great season so far. Unlike Columbus, I don't think he's got as good of a blue line in front of him here down there in Florida this year, and I think it's shown. We'll give Chris Driedger a lot of credit. Shutout in his first start. That sometimes can happen. First start, no film on him. Not much, to see on his tendencies and where his weaknesses are, and he took advantage of that with that shutout over Nashville. But whether it's him back in net again for a second straight start or whether it's Bobrovsky back in net, I don't think Florida's a team that I can trust defensively to show up 2 games in a row. Just look at their results. When Florida's off and under this year, and they're off and under, a rare under, against Nashville on Saturday, 5-2 to the over in their next game in 7 games following an under this year. So this play with Minnesota, Florida over 6 minus 110, which is my play of the day, falls into that subset. Florida off and under this year, 5-2 to the over. And they've only gone under the total in consecutive games at home 1 single time this year. That is it. And they've played a lot of home games. So I think it reverses course a little bit. I talked about how Minnesota offensively, their power play is working. 5-on-5 they're scoring, and Florida's defense is weak. On the flip side, we're really going to trust Alex Stalock for much longer. I know he's done yeoman's work, decent job in net, filling in for Devin Dubnyk in goal for the Wild, but this is just a mediocre, meandering, average, marginal backup goaltender in the NHL. I know he's been more good than bad, but now you're facing a potent offense. You're facing a team in the Florida Panthers that has had no problem scoring goals, that at home this year is averaging 3.75 goals per game. Minnesota, you look at them as well. For as good as their offense has been, penalty killing, they've given up a power play goal, Minnesota, in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of their last 6 games, and you're facing a great Florida power play. So you've got bad PK for Minnesota right now, but a good power play. And then on the flip side, you got Florida's power play, and their PK's a little bit hit or miss. It's been a little bit better, Florida, with the penalty kill lately, but for the season, their penalty killing numbers are still below average. And again, we talk about totals. We talk about Florida being 6.5. You look at Florida's recent games and most of their games this year, 6.5. Their last 10 games alone have been 6.5 totals, all of them. They haven't had a 6 or lower total. They've had a 6 with their total. I'm looking back right now. They've had 1 5.5 and they've had 1 6. All their other games this year, remarkably, Florida have been lined 6.5 with their total. So you're going to give me a rare 6 with Florida. I'm always going to be interested. So play of the day for me, Minnesota, Florida over 6 minus 110.
I like it, Ian. One of my article plays, not the Nashville one, obviously. The other one, the total that I'm on today, is the Wild team total over 2.5 minus 140. And for a lot of the reasons you laid out, small sample size on this goalie. So I'm not going to buy into the Panthers are going to continuously put up shutout-worthy performances to help them out there. And additionally, the Panthers this season, 2 shutouts, okay? One against the Wings, one the other night. And other than that, every game has gone, 24 of their 26 games have gone 2 goals or more, and 17 have gone 3 goals or more. Now, I'm not a trend better, but this is statistical evidence that Panthers just do not play quality defense. And for a Wild team that's finally getting some offense going, that this will happen. I mean, we don't know if Wild could end up one of the better offensive teams at the end of the year. We were expecting them to miss the playoffs. They still likely will, despite this sort of surge. But their offense was never going to be. It's like with the Coyotes as well. They start off the season, they get 1 goal in their first 3 games or something like that. These things always move to the norm. Hockey's a very random sport. Teams are never going to just have terrible offenses where they can never put 3 goals on. So when you have sort of a matchup where you have a 2.5 rather than a 3.5 against the Panthers, so you have a little bit of an undervalued offense on Mini, and you have a little bit of a overvalued defense on the Predators here with their goalie getting his second start off a shutout. It likely is sort of a perfect situation here. I do like the over 6 because I think if the Wild are able to put up 3, I can't see Stalock, shutting it out here. But yeah, so I agree with you there, and I'll probably join you on the over 6 as well later today.
All right, like an over 6, Minnesota and Florida. I'm looking. Yes, Dreger's back in net, and that's not surprising at all. He comes off. The kid gets a shutout in his first NHL game. Well, I saw this story with Adam Werner for Colorado, a month ago when Grubauer and Francouz, both of their top 2 goalies, were injured. Werner comes in off the bench for an injured Pavel Francouz, robs Winnipeg. And then the next game after that amazing performance, he gets lit up. And I'm not saying Dreger's going to get lit up tonight by Minnesota, but I'll bet the no, he's not getting a shutout tonight. Let's put it that way. Minnesota, Florida, over 6, -110, my play of the day. And Adam likes Nashville, -105 against Tampa Bay. All right, everybody, thanks for tuning in. Great stuff as always, Adam. We'll be back with you Thursday, 10:15 a.m. Eastern time for our next edition of the SBR NHL Double Play. For Adam Booth, I'm Ian Cameron. Have a great Tuesday night. Good luck on the ice, and we'll see you again on Thursday.